Section F of the Great Divide Trail had a bit of a rocky start after the initial section of highway, but it gradually improved towards the end. There were so many unbridged crossings on this section of the trail that I mused about changing my trail name from Blue Magi to Ford Perfect. One of the banes of thru hikers are sections of highway that need to be traveled between sections of trail. The GDT has two of these, one a 5-kilometer section of Highway 1, the Trans-Canada Highway, that I needed to travel last year heading into field, and the other a 30-kilometer section of the Yellowhead Highway, Highway 16, that I had to hike this year at the beginning of Section F. Both highways have a wide shoulder, and as long as you follow proper procedures, hiking on the left facing traffic, keeping your eyes open and staying as far to the left towards the side of the road as you possibly can, then these can be done fairly safely. For this section, I've curated a special playlist called Death Marches, which has 134 songs, all of which are at 4/4 tempo and about 110 beats per minute to keep me hiking quickly and steadily all day long. In addition to listening to my music, I have several other activities that I perform on these long stretches of highway. I play games, I sometimes read, I write my scripts and trail diary. I only had one situation this year, which was when I was about to cross the road. I did my normal check, and then I did my second check, which I always do, when I spotted a motorcycle which was right beside me at the point. I stopped short, he swerved, and that was the end of it, but it could have been bad if I hadn't double checked. The only other issue were 3 extremely wide loads which were going the other direction. The traffic control people were stopping vehicles at all tight curves so that vehicles going the other direction wouldn't be forced off the road. I have no idea what the items were. They were just about 10 meters wide, huge steel things painted yellow, obviously industrial, but I don't know what they were. After about 8 hours of road walking, I arrived at the western gates of Jasper National Park. From there, I traveled north a short distance across the Miette River to the Tote Road, which is a road that was used to construct the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway in 1911. There, I found the remains of an old horse camp, which really needs to be reactivated for GDT hikers. That evening was extremely rainy, so I had to wait between showers to set up my tent. Dinner was cooked below the branches of an overhanging tree that evening. July 20th started out really easy. I followed the Tote Road west for about 5 kilometers. The road continues to be used for recreational purposes, so it's in pretty good shape. The GDT then leaves the Tote Road and travels northwest along the Miette River Trail. My introduction to that trail was a 5-meter high stacked blowdown of trees. This rough of a trail is hard on both me and my equipment. About 11 a.m., my water bottle fell out of my pack with a thud, and I realized that the side pouch of my pack had been ripped wide open at some point during the morning. No problem, a few hasty field repairs made the side pouch serviceable, at least for the next few days. The low light of the day occurred after about 7 kilometers of hiking, when I met a couple who had completed the Berg Lake Trail and were now heading south on Section F of the GDT. They assured me that the trail conditions did not improve significantly. So in case you're thinking that the GDT is all parks and recreation, I have just been bushwhacking for the past 20 minutes. The area is infested with mosquitoes. It's wet. There was a thunderstorm yesterday afternoon. And I'm trying to follow a trail that may or may not exist. All I have really is a GPS track. All right, here's a highlight for an otherwise miserable, wet, rainy day. That's the very first huckleberry of the season, mountain huckleberries. Sure enough, the bushwhacking continued till I reached the very damp Miette River campsite, 5 kilometers further along. Today took on the character of Frodo's quest to Mordor to destroy the One Ring in Lord of the Rings. It's been like this all day, just hazy, hazy, hazy. Looks like I'm about to get some rain here. I resisted the urge to listen to the soundtrack as I hiked. Things were just freaky enough as they were. I was walking through a narrow valley with steep, jagged mountains all around. The clouds were low and the twilight never ended. It lasted all day. I had no idea what time it was without actually checking my watch. The first 7 kilometers were a repeat of the previous day, bushwhacking and route finding on a trail that hadn't been maintained in years. Then it was ascending towards Miette Pass, hiking over heather and moss with continuing low clouds and this perpetual gloom. It was really quite unnerving. I finally crossed the boundary into British Columbia over Miette Pass. After a further 9 kilometers, I was at Grant Pass, and then shortly after starting to head down, I was face on into a full-blown storm and downpour. The Swedish say that there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing, but the reality is a little bit more complicated. Ideally, you want to be wearing clothing that's appropriate for the weather 10 minutes in the future, not 10 minutes in the past. The reason for that is that you don't want to be changing your clothes in the middle of a storm when you're going to get soaked. The situation coming down from Grant Pass illustrated this perfectly. I was wearing my rain jacket, my rain hat, and rain pants on top of t-shirt and shorts. Unfortunately, the weather conditions deteriorated quickly and it got very cold, so I had to hike the remaining 2.9 kilometers to the Colonel Pass campsite, shivering and becoming almost hypothermic in the process. If I lost my bearings, as I had done many times that day already, I would have ended up being in a dire situation, being very cold, wasting several hours trying to find my way to the campsite. Fortunately, in the gravity of the situation, I kept my focus and I arrived promptly at Colonel Pass campsite, 233 meters below the pass. There, I found a large Douglas fir tree where I was able to set up below it and get some dinner in me and shelter the tent a little bit from the storm. Around 4 a.m. on July 22nd, I awoke to overcast skies, and I spent the morning navigating through downed trees in an old burned over area. By 9 a.m. the sun had come out, and this was a good thing because today was the day I had to cross 6 or 7 fords on the Moose River. Most of these were easily managed except for the last one, which came up to the top of my hips. I swear that ford number 4 or 5 was unusually warm. I'm not sure if this is because it was mid-afternoon and I needed a cool down, or because there was a hot spring upstream somewhere. Many of the photographs from Tuesday were foggy because water had gotten into my phone during the rain the previous day. I was able to take some rice from one of my meals and put it in a Ziploc bag and then seal the phone up in the bag to get it to dry out a little bit. That afternoon, I ended up at Step Creek, which was a fairly decent campsite. On July 23rd, I woke up and went back to sleep after my 5 a.m. alarm twice, which is interesting because my watch only goes off once, so I must have dreamed at least one of them. I woke up at 9 a.m. greatly refreshed. Obviously, I needed the extra sleep. I didn't realize that the first challenge for the morning was to ford Step Creek right after the campsite. I headed out, got to the ford, and then decided to head back to the campground where a large log had fallen across the stream. In the 5 minutes between when I left and when I came back, a large porcupine had set up camp on top of the log and wasn't about to move for me or anybody else. I certainly wasn't going to mess with them. I got some good photos, but I had to go to another log to get across the stream that morning. Climbing towards the summit of Moose Pass, I looked up and ahead on the trail was an outline of a moose head and antlers. At first I thought this must be some sort of a joke, a moose outline on Moose Pass. But then, as I pulled out my camera, the head turned and the moose slowly walked off the trail. As I got to where the moose had been, I tried to find it. There were only a few trees in the area, but this large animal had completely vanished. Some evidence about how well camouflaged even these large animals are. 3.2 kilometers later, I reached Calumet Creek, my campground for the evening. Today I will reach the Berg Lake Trail, which marks the transition between Section F and Section G of the Great Divide Trail. Once again, the possibility of aborting the trip presents itself, and I'm going to be sorely tempted to head down through Berg Lake to the highway. I was tired. I had seen as much mountain scenery as I could absorb, and I was longing for some summer weather. If only I had waited until later in the season to start, the weather in general might have been better. But first was the Smoky River Ford, which some people have described as perhaps the hardest unbridged crossing on the GDT. I believe this is on par with any of the passes that I've done so far. This is the Smoky River, the biggest, baddest, and hardest ford on the GDT. I got up early to cross it before the stream levels rose because this is fed by glacial meltwater. If ever there was a good place for a bridge, this would be it. And that was it for Section F of the GDT. A short distance up the bank was the junction with the Berg Lake Trail, which headed south and west towards civilization. Continuing north along the GDT took me to Kakwa Lake. Usually, when changing sections of trail like this, there's a transition in the trail maintenance as well, and in this case, it worked in my favor. The trail north looked great. Turns out, I was suckered again. Woohoo! There we go. A little more masculine. All right. Have a great day.